friends, and welcome to the 11th episode of All New Snap Judgments. I'm Roy Rogers, and joining me today, as always, is my friend and yours, Aaron Glazer. Glazer, my friend, how is it for you on this wonderfully balmy August evening?
It's awesome. 1 week until I'm in London, and everyone else should be at SnapCon. So I'm excited.
Everyone else. Yes, exciting times all around as we are in the dog day waiting days of summer. And to help us pass the time in this sort of lovely final days of the summer, we have two awesome special guests. Glazer, who is joining us this evening to discuss Marvel Snap?
We have one of my favorite daytime streamers first. She is the best voice in Snap, taking that crown from J-Hugs. Poor J-Hugs didn't know what hit him. She is an unbelievable player who's not Series 3 complete and still competes at the highest levels of Marvel Snap. Welcome, FionaShadeStories.
Hi. And of course, I've got Marble and Sega with me too, who you will see on my streams. There are my cuddly stuffed animal buddies who make sure I don't get too stressed out when I am not doing as well in the competitive scene.
Fiona, before Glazer introduces our second guest, why don't you let our loyal listeners and viewers know where they could find you if they want to check out your work?
Yeah, so y'all can find me on Twitch at FionaShadeStories. You can find me on Twitter at FionaShadeStory, not pluralized at the end because there's a character limit on Twitter usernames. And you can also find my work on drivethroughrpg.com. I'm a writer and a content creator. I'm also a freelance editor and sensitivity writer for role-playing game source books. And so my first book, The Adventure College 5e D&D compatible supplement, is coming out shortly on DriveThruRPG. You can find a free sample of it there, also as Fiona Shade Stories.
Awesome. Glazer, who is our second special guest this week?
Our second special guest is the man I spent my weekend with, and it was an unbelievably joyous time. He is the most positive voice in anything good that will ever come out of the creator program. You can just credit straight to this gentleman. Welcome, JesseJames, JesseJames, JJ, Double J. Pick a way to say it, but welcome him either way.
Thank you, Glazer. Happy to be here. Yeah, casting this weekend was an absolute blast, and some of those matches, oh my gosh, both tournaments this weekend were just jam-packed, full of excitement. Big in Japan is one incredible Marvel Snap season, to say the least.
Where can our viewers find you?
Oh, yes. Most of my content is live on twitch.com. Or twitch.tv, my apologies, over at JeeseJames. I've also got a YouTube at Jesse or JesseJames, JeeSes. Or oh my goodness, I'm messing all this up. But I just hit the meme number. Of 69 subs on YouTube. So if you guys just want to bookmark that page and not subscribe, I am okay with that. And I just dabbled into TikTok. I've got 2 videos out there, and it's a lot of fun. So I think I'm going to be doing content there too. You got to add gaming in at the end of the username though to find me on TikTok.
All right. Well, after you're done checking out our guests, I hope our loyal listeners and watchers will follow us on our various social media. We are on Twitter, X, whatever the X Bird app is being called presently. It just became X on my phone today, which was very sad. But our tag there is at SnapJudgeCast. We are, very importantly, the official podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone. And you can find us on their Discord. Glazer is there engaging. Glazer is there being a huge part of the community. And advantage, the Marvel Snap Zone Discord is the best large Discord in the community, so it's win-win. You support us by joining the Discord, you support Marvel Snap Zone, and you get to engage with other awesome snappers. The link to join the Discord is in the YouTube description or the podcaster podcatcher. There we go. Description of the episode. Our email, which we will try to get back to you if we can find it through all of the kick spam that Glazer subjected us to, is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. We are on everybody's favorite dead and extinct animals social media. Mastodon at snapjudgments with an E at tabletop.vip. And last but not least, most importantly, is our YouTube at Snap Judgments Pod, where every weekday, including when he is on vacation in America's former Imperial Overlords, sort of center of the Imperial Metropole itself, Glazer will still be doing daily Snap videos. Aaron, if our loyal listeners would become our loyal viewers, what would they find on the YouTube right now?
So many Thanos decks. So many Thanos decks. We're entering a Thanos move in Darkhawk meta, and I've got like 6 distinct different builds of Thanos that all can compete at a top level coming this week.
All right, exciting.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I love Thanos.
Off after you are checking out the Mad Titan on our YouTube, you should come back to listening to this episode where we are going to be doing the top 10 tips in Marvel Snap. But before we do that, we are going to talk about this week's card, Lady Death Strike, a Series 5 card. So that means she's going to cost you 6,000 tokens. But she has the ability, she costs 5, she's got 3 power, and her ability is, on reveal, destroy each card here with less power than this. Fiona, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Lady Death Strike?
Well, I think there are a couple of really big lines that are hard not to think of immediately when you look at this card. For example, Wong into Shuri into Death Strike. You could even make things happen a little faster if you got really lucky. Zabu into Wong into Shuri into Death Strike into Arnim Zola. I don't personally own Wong and I don't personally own Arnim Zola, but I've heard a lot of chatter about that particular line. And I think my biggest concern, though, with Lady Death Strike, and not that I have the tokens right now to be picking her up, but and I'm not opening the Spotlight Cache, but the biggest concern I have with her is whether without a line like that, she will be effective enough as a destroy card. Given her relatively low power ranking, it would be great against things like Iron Man. It would be great against certain things like that. But I do worry that if you don't get that line off, if you don't up her base power a little bit, then unfortunately she might not hit as wide of a blast as you would like. What about you, Jeese?
Oh, I'm so ready for Lady Death Strike. Finally, something coming into Marvel Snap that can actually counter Dracula. We've been needing a tech card against Dracula for a while, but I fully agree with you, Fiona. Like, as far as this being like a build around card, you're gonna make a new deck type with this. I'm a little hesitant to go that far and think about it, because that line is just honestly a little too linear, right? So what else are you popping in there? Like, now are you running Black Panther as well to get that off? Well, that's just one card different, right? Those, I feel like the Wong Shuri lines in general, a lot of any of the Wong lines where they're best starting on 3, they're always hard to synergize a different win condition along with them. So I don't see her necessarily being a build around card. We'll see what the community does with her, but I'm ready to experiment with her in negative. I think she's a big boost to the negative deck, which definitely needs a little bit of love in my opinion. And I'm just, again, my biggest joy out of this card is we definitely have a hard counter to Dracula, which I think, discard's not the top of the top, but it's kind of nice to see that counter come in after discard had a really strong reign in the meta there for a while, and is by no means, a bad and performing deck. So yeah, super excited about this. Glazer, what are your thoughts here? Are you as excited as I am for the Dracula? counter, or do you think that's kind of inconsequential here?
I mean, I think she's probably poopy. I'm going to be honest. I'm probably grabbing her because I'm game complete, and at this point, I'm keeping up just because, like, I feel like I should. Now that I like, when I wasn't complete, I didn't give a shit. But now that I am complete, I feel like I want to stay complete. And I've got 9 spotlight caches, and if I can, so I'm going to open for her, I think. I don't know if I'm doing it tonight or if I'm doing it like Friday, but I'm going to open for her. I think everyone's going to go negative, and I think the negative deck is probably as good as a negative deck gets. I've got that in the video. That, I don't know, time is awkward based on recording this, but like it's going, it'll be live by the time you can see this episode. I think where I want to go with this is Thanos, because where I want to go with everything is Thanos. Because with Thanos, I can play this on turn 4 and kill a bunch of stones and kill some opponent stuff, mess up their early tempo. And I can, if I have to play it on turn 5, I can play it into a Soulstone lane, which is going to increase the amount of things it can hit. It's also going to be, I think, really good with Hazmat, because I don't know if y'all noticed this, but Luke Cage has 2 power. So that's my general gist. I don't know, are any of those like actually good, or are they like meme good? I think the Thanos one is probably the real good one. The others are worth messing with to see where we land.
All right. So, as become my recent tradition, I'll start with Jesse. TDLR. Would you spend tokens or open caches for her? If you had the tokens, had the caches.
Right. I don't think she's 6,000 tokens. If she really sparks joy in you, then always chase whatever sparks joy for you. Caches are always a question because you have to consider the other cards. I wouldn't open caches before Friday. I would definitely let the whales and the streamers figure this one out.
Fiona, I know you're not series 3 complete, but let's say you had the tokens, you had the caches. Would you seek Lady Deathstrike?
Well, if I had the tokens and I had the caches, I would still not be able to, because I, in fact, don't have Mr. Negative, don't have Wong, don't have Arnim Zola. I don't have these cards that it really works super well with, and because I do love the anti-Dracula attack, and but that said, I don't see it having an amazing place, in every single Sarah control deck, and every single deck that is trying to get these tech card counters off consistently. And since I don't have the rest of the packages, though I also, Mr. Negative is a card I don't always think about since I don't own. I think that would be great. But personally, I also agree. I don't think it's worth 6,000 tokens regardless. But maybe it'll be tweaked in the future. Who knows? Did you have more thoughts, GC?
Yeah, I'm very interested, Fiona. I'm so glad that I get to sit with you on this pod, because you have this very unique perspective in the game that quickly disappears as you finally collect the cards, right? And you progress up to almost game complete. Are you worried about the meta swamping with Lady Deathstrike because you don't have the other enablers for her? Or do you feel like your pocket meta, you might see a couple of them? How does new cards like that impact your game style and your experience?
That's a really good question. I have to be very aware of the new cards. For example, if I don't play for a few days, when new cards have come out and then I come back to it and I'm suddenly losing because I didn't bother to look up and look into these cards, that's a reality for me. And so I do try to keep up with how they're coming out and think about them. When it's a card like this that I don't personally see a line for within the cards that I own, I try to ask other people, because if I didn't hear from y'all about the Mr. Negative thought, it just doesn't occur to me. I decided to go for Silver Surfer as my free Series 3 pull this month in order to make more archetypal decks around Surfer, and I was considering Surfer or Negative, and I decided Negative really only gives me, that one deck, whereas Surfer has a couple options. And so for me, since I'm thinking when I see a new card in terms of acquisition, I'm thinking, how many decks do I have that this slots in, or how many archetypes does this open for me? I also have to think about, since I am limited, what could this new card go into that it would really power up facing off against my decks? And especially because people tend to play a card more the week that it comes out, especially the first couple of days, as people who are series complete are grabbing it and experimenting with it because they want to. It makes me a little bit wary on ladder. So, with the point that Glazer made about having a Thanos deck where this could actually be useful in order to get rid of those stones, it makes me consider, playing my Thanos decks more, which I was already intending to this week, and saying like, hey, you're doing me a favor if you clear some board space for me. And or playing those decks that like lock something down with Professor X on turn 4, using like a time stone into X or something like that. So I can say, this isn't going to derail my plays. So if I can't think of how I slot it into my own cards, I think my best advice for other folks who are Series 3 complete in that same situation is to ask your friends, ask your fellow community members who are Series complete how they plan to play with this card. And then you can play around that a little bit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That was very insightful,
awesome.
Fiona. Thank you so much.
That was great.
Quick advice before we move on. Let's move on from this card, but real quick advice for listeners. If you have 4 Spotlight caches, unless Lady Deathstrike is going to bring you more joy than anything in this world, wait until next week. Silk and X23 are much more likely to be meta. Silk is already a meta card, and X23, I think, has a higher ceiling than Lady Deathstrike, or a much higher floor than Lady Deathstrike. Lady Deathstrike's ceiling is through the roof, but a much higher floor than Lady Deathstrike. So getting 2 Series 5 cards, while Lady Deathstrike is only appearing with Series 4 cards, is a better value for your spotlights.
True.
All right. So, real quick, we'll start with Jesse. Thoughts on Wolverine's misbegotten son? 1 week of having him around in the meta. How is Dakin, however you want to pronounce it, how is he doing for you? Either games, you watched Tournament with Glazer, commented Tournament with Glazer, either as a commentator or as a player.
I've really enjoyed Dakin as a player. He feels very similar to me, kind of like Thor, where it's just like, yeah, this is just a solid 3-drop, period. I've been having a lot of fun with him in Destroy Thanos, where I'm also running Valkyrie. So sometimes I just use that Muramasa blade as a Valkyrie target to overcome a lane, since it's another potential 1-drop if I'm not getting all my stones. But yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's he's a very solid card. I don't think he's necessarily meta defining. I don't remember seeing a lot of him in these tournaments this past weekend, but he's a very solid card. I've enjoyed him a lot, and yeah, overall, all the cards this season, like their tie-in with Wolverine, like their mechanic and the lore behind it, in that it ties into the comic, like that Muramasa blade and that powering it up, which makes him so much more powerful than Wolverine, so much quicker. I just love the lore tie-in. Absolutely enjoy it. Fiona, how have you been seeing a lot of Dakin up in the meta? How would you want to grab this card eventually, or is this just kind of not your play style?
Well, personally, I currently am missing a lot of the discard cards. The only destroy card I'm missing, though, that is pretty key, is Venom. And I do pick up the battle passes, and mostly actually for the gold and the credits rewards, since I don't pay for anything else. I find that really helps me get spotlights and things a little quicker. I just find it the most bang for my buck, so to speak. So I actually do own Dakin, and I tried playing around making that Dakin bacon, seeing if I could sizzle up something good, cook up something good. And I didn't have a lot of success personally, but I saw, Teddy Ninja make a cool video trying to see how high he could get his Dakin to be. I heard about, I think, Elite X Hasa broke the integer limit on a stream with Nakin. And so I admire that kind of play style immensely, and I think it's really cool when you can take one card and you can see how far can I make this go. And And I also agree with the lore tie-in, though. I think Wolverine is one of those cards who is really represented mechanically in his lore. Like that, he gets destroyed and he gets bigger. He just keeps coming back. And so I think it's cool. I haven't seen it played much in my experience. But then again, the Nimrod decks are really strong right now. And so when I have seen it, I've seen it kind of as a placement, a 3-cost placement in a Nimrod deck. Throw the shard in the lane that with the Nimrod that's eventually going to get destroyed or venomized. But yeah, that's pretty much it, Roy. I don't know. I don't have that many polls for me telling me play with this card right now.
Awesome. Glazer, how's it been for you?
One of the more powerful cards in the game that doesn't have a meta deck that's really its home right now. I think it's worth having. Super fun. I don't think the very best decks. I think it's likely in the 4th best archetype in the game, Surfer. But I think the top 3 is a tier above Surfer. So, like, if you find Surfer fun, if you just want to have a powerful card, you should basically always buy the Season Pass. But decking is really good, and you can climb with them.
All right. Well, I don't know, Fiona, do you have Spider-Man?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what have you thought about the changes to Peter Parker over the last week?
Personally, big fan. I think that on the subject of lore, just right off the bat, I think this version of Spider-Man does a lot more what I feel like Spider-Man does. Swings around, grabs somebody, swings them around into a more ideal location, takes them out, as opposed to the webbing up a lane. And beforehand, the Spider-Man and Galactus combination was just really obnoxious, I gotta say. And so I also feel happy to be seeing Spider-Man fit into another wide range of movement decks now. I personally love movement as a concept and how it's executed in Marvel Snap. I do really enjoy using lockdown cards and using cards like Polaris or Spider-Man to move things around. I mean, some of my favorite things to do with Polaris, for example, is to hit Invisible Woman and pull it off, or clunk a lane. Spider-Man, it's a little bit less predictable. You don't know where it's going to go. But my favorite thing about it is that it can pull an unflipped card with it, which just moving. Invisible Woman can really change how things are going to go for that opponent that turn. So, for example, if they play Storm or something like that, and you can anticipate it, or similar movements like that, you can just say you're not going to get to double down on this lane early, so you're going to be splitting your power. And as a 3/5, it has a pretty good amount of power coming into it too. So I think the benefit of messing up your opponent's plan while still getting out a 5 cost can really help you threaten multiple lanes and make your opponent not able to threaten or decoy that lane they were initially going to be going down first. So I just think it's a lovely tech card. It does a great job of capturing what I feel the lore of Peter Parker is. And then I also just think it's a good value for a 3-cost card. What about you, GC? Have you played with this? Are you enjoying it compared to the old one? Do you miss the old one's power at all? Or are you just straight up happier to be having it this way?
Absolutely happier. I mean, it definitely feels more like Peter Parker now, without a doubt. Every single video game that's ever had Spider-Man in it's got that classic move, web them, pull them to you, jump off of them, both you end up in a different location. I love the fact that we see this happen in Marvel Snap. I really enjoy Spider-Man a weekend. I think it's a better change. I think it's a good card. It excites me every time they do this. They did this with Wolverine too, right? They reworked Wolverine, specifically giving him better lore work and upping his playstyle. Leader's gone through reworks. We've seen Galactus go through reworks. I love this from the game. They listened to us. They saw just how bad that Galactus Spider-Man really felt and just how uninteractive it was. And they changed it, and it comes out being better and stronger. with more lore tie-in. And next on my wish list is Quicksilver, because that is the trashiest, worst card on the face of this planet. So make Quicksilver something that I want to play with. Glazer, have you found any hot spice that comes out of this Spider-Man rework that just like everybody should be trying out? That's not the obvious like move
The
tech.
Lambie deck, right? But look, Spider-Man's a meta card now. Like you have to. He's just. I think he might be like the Jeff of 3-drops, where it's just like I have room for a 3-drop. What 3-drop do I put in? Okay, Spider-Man. He obviously has places he does more than that, move and surfer in particular. But like I think he's just like the class of I have a filler spot in my 3-drops and I want some stats. I don't want Killmonger because I have ones. I don't want Cosmo because I have on reveals. Okay, let's throw in a Spider-Man. Like I think he's that card right now in the meta. And considering that like it's Spider frickin' Man, that's a good place for him to be.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, the Spider-Man is not featured in Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3, so I have no opinions on anything having to do with the changes of cards since August 3rd. But
Fair enough.
let's continue and dig in. This month's Spotlight caches. All right, so we've got Galactus, Nimrod, and Spider-Ham coming down the pike. We got Lady Deathstrike, MODOK, and Stature. We got X-23, Nebula, and Silk. And we got Silver Samurai, Kitty Pryde, and Spidey 2099. So, what's the strategy for y'all this week? We'll start with you, Jesse. Or excuse me, not this week, this month. How are you approaching card acquisition this month? What are your goals? What caches are you going to search? Dig in? And which ones are you going to pass on?
Yeah, so this month is the first month that I've opened a Spotlight cache. Last month with straight to S4 and just kind of being game complete, I was able to use my tokens and really hoard up. I spent 3 on this week to get that Rian Spider-Ham variant. It was just too beautiful. So, yep, that took me 3 spotlights. I want all the new cards. I think Lady Deathstrike's going to be fun, X-23 and Silver Samurai. I've got a good number of tokens, but with token acquisition slowing down and the rumor, or not the rumor, it's on the roadmap of ultimate variants being enhanced, I'm going to open what it takes this month to get the new cards and then stop. Fiona, any of these you busting spotlights open for?
I actually am, so this will also be my first month opening spotlights. If I didn't have Spider-Ham already, I'd consider doing Galactus, Nimrod, Spider-Ham, because Galactus is my least favorite of the big bads. I think he'll probably be the one I get last after Kang. I have Thanos and High Evo right now, and I'm loving them. But I also don't have Nimrod, and I absolutely detest going up against Nimrod decks and just not having a good answer for it a lot of the time. And which is, part of the reason I'm actually trying out some different decks this week. And so those 2 cards are very exciting. But then, Galactus doesn't really excite me that much. For Lady Deathstrike, we've already talked about. I also lack MODOK, but I pulled Stature from a cache, or a reserve. And so, again, that's like one card I'm excited about, but I'm missing so many discards. And so I have to be selective since I'm Series 3 incomplete. And we'll talk about this soon, but like with collector's tokens slowing down, like I got to be selective. So I'm going to miss next week too. However, X-23, Nebula, and Silk. Like I said, I get battle passes, so I have Nebula. X-23, I think, is going to be very good in a wide variety of decks with its discard or destroy potentiality. And I am only missing Venom for my current destroy setup. Well, I'm also missing Null, but so X-23 I'm excited for, and Silk I'm really excited for because I've been enjoying watching a lot of movement decks gain traction, and a lot of those decks run Silk. And so I think personally, Silk synergizes so well with so many cards, whether it's Craven or it's locking down lanes. It's giving you some extra power over there after you've stormed and jugged, if you still need it, or something like that. There's just so many things that Silk synergizes with. I think Glazer actually already mentioned it. And so it is very much a meta card. I'll very much be going for that. I also do think Nebula is very much a meta card. It slots into so many decks as a like when you have an open 1-cost card. And so I think I would even maybe recommend that to people. I also think that the last cash of the month, I haven't settled my opinion on Silver Samurai yet. Kitty Pryde I already own, but if you joined after the point where everybody was given Kitty Pryde, she's just so meta, so important in so many decks. Spider-Man 2099 looks really fun and is, I'm thinking like, I love the destroy in a move deck. I love that. And I think I can hit multiple cards potentially. And so I think I'm very, unless they change that, I'm trying to remember, but correct me if I'm wrong, Glazer. I'll toss it to you in a second. But Spider-Man at 2099, I think it's the first time it moved to a location. Is that one time? Is that per location?
No, one time.
No, just one time. And you can't reset it by like returning it to your hand or something. So
okay, cool. So that's still pretty good though. So I think that those 2 caches are the ones I'm on the lookout for. And since I only have 5 spotlight caches right now, I'm going to go for the X23 Nebula Silk. What about you, Glazer? Do you have any that you're like, okay, well, your collection complete, but do you have any that if you were in my shoes or somebody else's shoes who's not, that you'd be like, ooh, this is the spice, or if you have this card, then this is the spice?
I'm very close to. If you get Silk early, I think you should open for Silver Samurai. I think that those 2 cards are going to synergize together perfectly, and not in ways anyone thinks, really, right? I just think Silver Samurai is going to be really strong, and a lot of those decks like to run Stature and Black Bolt already, and having an extra way to trigger them while like 80% of the deck is 5 power, and then you can stick Dakin in there. You can stick something like Colleen in there with maybe like a Swarm or something along those lines, and you've got like this new archetype or like a combo of what's really powerful right now with some new stuff that has extreme power. I'm convinced Silver Samurai is going to end up being the card of the month. It always seems to be one we don't expect, and my guess for this month is Samurai, not Deathstrike, because everyone assumes it's X23. Look, I would open 8 caches to make sure I got X23 and Silk if I had to. I'm hoping to not spend tokens. I don't want to say I don't have Browday numbers of tokens. He's got like 100,000, but I've got like an insane number of tokens for me, and so I'm still hoarding them because they're just so like getting double the cards with your tokens is just insanely better value than buying Series 5 cards. I've got 9 caches saved up. I'm hoping that the luck will be in my favor, and I can use these to get all of the cards this month, and then I will have nothing saved up next month, or maybe I'll just be able to open just enough for Alioth.
all right. Well, I hope our loyal listeners found these perspectives compelling and interesting to help them shape their purchasing this month. But what we're really interested in talking about is our first of the 2 topics that we're really going to dig in here, because we are lucky enough to have Fiona on here, and the fact that she's a highly competitive player and is not Series 3 complete is one of the most unique things in sort of high-level content creation for Snap. So it's a great opportunity to sort of pick your brain, Fiona, and sort of share experiences that might be closer to a lot of our listeners, new and old. So what, for you, does progress feel like now that you're in Series 3? Could you give our listeners as well like a sense of kind of like how far you are exactly in Series 3?
Absolutely. So I'm happy to answer these questions a little fluidly, both the ones written and the ones you just asked. I feel compared to, Series 1 and 2, or the recruitment season, I guess if you count that, it's a bit of a slog, it's a bit of grind. It's a bit less. I mean, obviously, you're getting the reserves less often than the caches. I think that was the name way back when 6 weeks ago, when I wasn't in series, when I wasn't high enough that I was having collector's reserves yet. What were they called?
Collector's caches?
Yeah, I think they were
Yeah.
caches, right? So it's slower, but it's also more rewarding, I find. Of course, as somebody who is trying to be a highly competitive player, I think I kind of got elevated when in the Snap-Offs 2 at about 1600 CL, I came in second place, beating out a lot of people who had complete or much higher collections, people like Educated Collins and Eggs. And I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot. And, in that game, I didn't know how retreat later worked. I didn't click it one time in the entire tournament. I was newbie. I've been playing for like 5-6 weeks, I think. And so I think the thing is, if you have the right couple of cards that are the core, you can build with your early series cards a lot of different shells, including ones which are oftentimes meta, and ones which are oftentimes so meta adjacent that they do the things you need them to do with a little twist that surprises people and they don't necessarily account for it. So at this point, I'm at 69 actually now out of 99 Series 3 cards. I have a few higher series cards from dropping collector's tokens on them. My last, I really it's really bemoaned letting go 6,000 collector's tokens to get Jeff. And I felt like I really needed it. And I think it's worth 6,000 tokens. But it was hard because at that point, when I was playing the Snap-Offs 2, like that month, I was gaining a few thousand collector's tokens a month. And so it felt very reasonable to buy Zabu and Darkhawk, which I did in order to be able to make my Devils on a Dark Moon, Darkhawk, Devil Dinosaur, Moon Girl deck. And it was great, and it worked out really well. But, now I don't have the most meta version of that deck because I don't have Nick Fury. And I would like Nick Fury. I would like a lot of these cards, and I would like the ability to just say, like, okay, like I'm missing Null and I'm missing Venom. Like I'm just gonna grab Null, and then I'm like halfway to having the next time it appears in my shop, and I'm halfway to having that destroy stuff going. But I can't because we're in an era which I would refer to as the fall of collectors tokens, and it is very unfortunate for me as somebody who wants to play competitively. So the thing about the new Spotlight system is that you will technically get more cards on your collection track, just less cards that you really personally want. So the best bet for gaining cards right is to save for Spotlight caches where there are 2 to 3 cards you really, really want. However, it's still gambling. It's not purchasing or crafting cards of your choice with your hard-earned currencies, which means that unless you have a huge bankroll to purchase credits or purchase gold, you aren't able to do that since the reduction in the acquisition of collector's tokens. At this point, if you go through getting the variants, you spend 7,000 gold and get 10 variants, and then you gain 2,000 collector's tokens. The 8,000 gold costs $100, so that means that 2,000 collector's tokens is valued at $87.50, which is absolutely ridiculous. So it's harder for me to get a complete, or anyone to get a complete collection of cards now using the token shop. It's harder for me to get specific cards that I'm missing that will fill out a meta archetype, whether that's a big bad like Thanos or just a key Series 4 card like Nimrod or Stature. On top of this, the monetizing of cosmetics feels like a slap in the face to me. When I crack a Spotlight cache, I would rather gain collector's tokens than a special variant, no matter how cool the variant. I can't even think about, spending collector's tokens on ultimate variants because my pockets aren't that deep. The problem with this design philosophy that Second Dinner has is also its strength. The building of unique collections is tailored towards casual play. Trading out collector's tokens for spotlight caches makes for slightly faster acquisition rather than more targeted acquisition. If you can deprioritize getting your infinite borders, hitting infinite on ladder, or winning tournaments, and you just want to play some casual games, then this does make Marvel Snap more interesting for you. However, I think that even most casual players like to be a little more self-directed and prefer to have a crafting or purchasing currency like collector's tokens so that they can get the cards they really want, and which is the case in most card games like this. And whether that's because you really want to get your favorite character in the MCU, you love Kitty Pryde, you want to have Pride for Pride, or because it will strengthen a deck that you already love to play with. And we get into Conquest mode in the offering of gold tickets as collectors reserve rewards, and we see something like even more counter to casual play. Conquest mode games take far longer than ladder games, which means that casual players are less likely to use those gold tickets. And as a competitive player, I don't want those tickets at all. I can earn those tickets. I want to pull currency, collector's tokens, ideally, that I can use to gain cards and increase my decks and better my chances of earning those tickets. So I see there's a potential variety, there's a potential middle ground, I think, where the unique collection aspect focuses on cosmetics and variants, but right now it feels slow. And since the recent changes, I admire the effort to make gaining cards faster in some ways. However, as a competitive player, I'd rather get, say, 5 cards a month, which I got to choose a couple of, or all of, than like 6 cards that I gambled to get some of and otherwise like were more random. So personally, I'd rather get those 5 targeted cards than just any 6 random cards. I'd rather have it be oriented towards completing my collection using collector's tokens, which right now I'm just not gaining at the same rate as before. That's my spiel. I'm gonna toss it over to you, Roy, or yes.
Wow, that was extremely comprehensive answer, Fiona. I was not expecting you to be so thoroughgoing. So that was really impressive. Jesse or Glazer, do you have any sort of follow-up questions here for Fiona based on her excellent insights into the, like, you gave me a lot to mull over. Like, I'm actually quite blown away. So, Glazer, Jesse?
Yeah, I got something, but it's just a compliment. Like, that was amazing. So, one of my least favorite things that the community does is we straw man for the Series 3 incomplete player, right? Like, we make up our own arguments. Mm-hmm. That can be anything we want. This is so much better. The new players must be celebrating. Oh my god, this is terrible. The new players must be quitting. And, like, these are, like, actually having an answer from someone who's as intelligent and well-considered as you is, like, and obviously this is going to be, I don't think you're attempting to say every Series 3 incomplete player feels the way I do, but just that level of care and detail goes into thinking about this is fantastic, and I think should be referenced by the community going forward for these discussions.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. This is the segment that I was most interested in, Fiona. I played back in beta, and this was before we had tokens. Forget about S4, forget about S5, and I joined the early Discord, and everyone's like, "Oh, S3 acquisition so slow," and I was like, "It feels okay to me, guys. It feels okay to me." And they were like, "Oh, just wait until you get further down." And then I did get further down, and it still kind of felt okay to me. I think I have a higher tolerance for the slower acquisition and the lack of agency, but one thing about that is, like, that was I was Series 3 complete by global release. I made it a goal of mine, and that was silly. Don't do that. Don't make it a goal to spend more money. That's not how you save money. But I did it, and I hit Series 3 complete by global launch. And I look back at those days and I'm like, yeah, I can understand why I wasn't too upset, because it was like, oh, I'm still getting cards and there's not that many cards. Now with like a Series 4 and a Series 5 and the token shop wrapped in as well, I quite literally feel like I cannot put myself in your shoes, Fiona. Like, it is so important for the community to listen to the competitive Series 3 Incomplete and the casual Series 3 Incomplete, because if I'm being dead honest with myself, I have no reference point. There were no tokens. There was no Series 4. That stuff did not exist.
And also, you really hit the nail on the head with like the phrase lack of agency. Really kind of does describe how I'm feeling right now as a Snap player. And it's almost like, it's almost hurtful. I really like this game. I like this game so much that I didn't, I was kind of streaming as a hobby. It's like a secondary thing. And I've got really into it and I'm really loving it. And when I stream, I try really hard to talk openly about my plays and my decisions and my experiences, and I try to like throw AMA on any title that I think is not getting too long, because I want other people to love this game and enjoy it. But it's harder to enjoy it if you're not able to like play those decks that you really want to play. And unfortunately, I see the fall of collector's tokens as a direct lack of agency, or a direct loss of agency, excuse me.
So they've really hung their hat, and they may be hanging their hat on a shovel that they're using to dig their own grave, just to mix metaphors real well here, with this lack of agency.
God.
Yeah, I thought Roy would like that. And by like, I mean absolutely hate, just so we're all clear.
Writers in the room. Grimace.
I'm an English teacher. I will destroy my metaphors when I damn well please. Okay. I think that unique collections are a terrible idea. I think that, and I'm going to come on here every week, as long as anytime this is a topic that we need to discuss, and say unique collections are a terrible idea, because people want to play certain things. And saying you can't play my game the way you want to is not a good look, because then I'm just going to go play a different game that I can play the way I want to. Like, the less invested you are, right? Like, if you're not invested and you're like, I really want to play X, and then you go on whatever, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, for some ungodly reason, and you go, hey, can I play a discard deck? And they're like, well, you're missing these 6 cards. No, maybe in 4 months. And so I'm like, cool, I'm going to go play literally anything else. Thanks, though. I just think unique collections are how they hang their hat and themselves. Was that one better? I did Zugma.
That one is darker, but better. So, yeah, I mean, I think the bespoke collections is like an interesting approach, but I do think at this point it's a failure because it creates a weird relationship with money, where the amount of money you spend, like, I play Magic as well as Snap, and like Magic at the end of the day is fundamentally gated by your credit card limit, and there's like this like clear 1-to-1. Like right now, for example, I need to buy some pretty expensive Magic cards, and I know how much they are, and that's the gate. And once I get that money in my my entertainment budget, I'll buy them. In Marvel Snap, it's not quite the same thing. Like, if you wanted to be Series 3 complete, exactly how much money you need to spend to get there is kind of hidden, right? And so it doesn't feel like taking your credit card out is going to get you necessarily what you want, as much as, you're in Fiona's situation of being mostly free to play, and, you have no agency. But even really people who are whales or dolphins, like, they also don't have the agency to get what they want. And that, I think, is one of the strangest things about their monetization approach, which I think probably works out for them on the highest end whales, who just will spend literally any amount of money. But I think for people who aren't quite sort of the Elon Musk or Zuckerberg of game spending, it's definitely strange. Fiona, you had a point.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with you and say again, like, I crunched those numbers before coming on because I was curious, because you can't just directly buy collector's tokens. So they're valuing 2,000 collector's tokens at $87.50. That's a lot of money, and it's not enough to buy one card. You need like at least twice that. So that means they're valuing a Series 4 card at, and excuse my terrible math skills, but I would estimate around $170. And that's a lot. that's a lot of money. And like also, yes, like the other thing is, and I really, I don't know how much I can push this idea, and but a wee relative newbie to the Snap world and the streaming world, but I think that I love the idea of the unique aspect being more cosmetic because, as it is, I just like can't really think. The only variants I have are the ones, for the most part, I've spent a few bits of gold on them, and I really like that eventually that'll turn into collector's tokens. But I will probably never spend more than 700 gold now on a variant because I spent 1,200 on an art germ before this, before realizing that like they would eventually contribute to getting 2K tokens once you do 10 purchases. And now I'm not going to do that again because as much as I love my luscious art germ white queen variants, I am not going to be doing that again. I'm going to be reining in my lesbianism a little and saying I don't make those purchases because then I'm bad. I'm spending gold badly. I'm making a bad investment because you can invest 7,000 gold instead of like 7,500 I'll have now invested in my first like 2K collector's tokens off of that track. And also the other thing I would note is that, yeah, I'm only buying the battle pass and that's it. And that means that the reason I'm doing that so consistently right now is because of Spotlight caches. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep doing that last month and this month, but I realized that because Spotlight caches give you some amount of autonomy, and the sheer amount of gold and the sheer amount of collectors token, sorry, not collectors, but credits you get throughout your battle passes 50 ranks makes it like bang for my buck in a way that I think even the token Tuesdays are essential to do, but like we're losing value on those other things. Like token Tuesdays, I think became overall less valuable too. The ratios are worse. And as far as I've seen in upcoming this month and next month leaked special things you can spend money on. It's like you can spend straight up money, but you can't spend gold on an e-bundle that gives you collector's tokens that's coming out anytime soon. They kind of stopped that. And that also makes me really sad. And again, feel like I've lost a good value for my gold. And at the same time, they've added in this like way where you can spend gold to evolve cards. And that's just like, for me, without I'm definitely nowhere near a whale, and so I am like I can't imagine spending my gold that way, and it just again kind of feels like a little bit of a slap in the face. Yeah, that's it for me on these topics. So to bounce it back to y'all.
Yeah, I think a big part of like the Marvel Snap economy, right, is that I think we often forget that this is a mobile gotcha game first, gachapon game. It is about going up, putting a quarter into the machine, cranking it down, and seeing what mystery prize box comes out, masquerading as a card game. And there's a clear line here, right? And we've been talking it. Keep your card game a card game.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the S4, the S5, the agencies a card game. Make the gachapon on the variants. I would be okay with you putting more random and if you gave me agency on card type acquisition and took agency away from my cosmetic acquisition, I'm okay with that. You make cosmetics more expensive, I'm okay with that. I know everybody, and I feel you, community. I do. You want to pick your borders. You do. Hey, if that's how we get a unique collection, is that you don't get to pick your border so that you can't synergize and be the gold on gold on gold, you literally have to roll that. If that's where the gachapon aspect's at and we limit it in the actual card acquisition, I'm down for it. I am there for it. But I do think that is something they got to keep an eye on, and balancing this tightrope, walking across this balance beam of how much of our card system can be gachapon. It's a balance beam. It's a tightrope. And personally, I believe that it's just going to be easier to make it even more and more gachapon on the cosmetic side. And don't bother with this tightrope because you lean one way or the other, and it's going to be difficult to maintain, in my opinion. But I'm not a game designer, but that's where I'm at. It's a gachapon game masquerading as a card game, and the closer they get to pushing that purely the cosmetics, the happier the community is going to be with the game.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. I think we have sort of hashed this out about as much as we're going to be able to in the time we have. So let's dig into something a little bit more positive. All right. The top 10 tips in Snap. Aaron, you put these together. What
We
is
all put
our...
these together.
We all put these together. Okay. So what are what's the first top 10 tip in Marvel Snap?
So very quickly, I just want to explain how this list came. I post a lot of decks on my site because, as regular, longtime viewers, listeners know, I crave novelty. I never play the same deck for long at all. I always want to be trying new things and playing different things. So, like, my YouTube channel ends up being like 2 decks a day. Like, I find decks that have good stats, that like are winning things, and I find 2 brand new ones a day, and it takes a lot of time. But I do that. But I realize, like, that's only useful to players who are like me. Some people just need to get better at Snap, and so, I don't know, because I have a big mouth largely, I know half the community, so I messaged a bajillion-ish people, and we're like, give me tips. Give me whatever you think is important to be better at Snap. I have a list of like 40 things. They'll all be used sooner or later. I sat with JJ and Fiona in a chat, and more or less came up with these 10 that we're going to talk about. The first one is, you have infinite cubes on ladder, but only 10 in Conquest. Like, first, like, before we go any further, grasping that is extremely important. Like, if you lose 8 cubes on a ladder, you've made it take longer to get to infinite. If you lose 8 cubes in Conquest, you've probably lost that run. Anything to add for that, or is that fairly obvious? No? All right. Okay. Although they're infinite on ladder, this is where like the actual stuff you need to consider goes. Although they're infinite on ladder, they do have value. Each game's cubes are a fraction of your goals. To hit an infinite of 70 is a minimum of 50 games, with each fraction of the larger picture. No one does it in 50 games. It's fundamentally impossible. You're not getting 8 cube game after 8 cube game. If you don't value cubes enough, you're going to make careless mistakes. And if you value them too much, you're going to be overly cautious, and it's going to take you for freaking ever to climb. I'm going to credit Turbo from our Discord, a phenomenal Snap player and former major poker player. That's why, like, this is his poker take on it. He was basically explaining using chips. Fiona, any thoughts on this tip?
I think, no, not really. Like, I do think that I love that Proving Grounds exists and is that place where you can say, all right, I'm going to like stick things out when I shouldn't stick them out because I really want to see how my opponent deck tracker like fills up this game, and just really want to see what they play on turn 6, which I might not see if I just like retreat every game until I get the perfect games and then play them out. I do think that every game is good to look at as a fraction of your goals most of the time. But I do think that, sometimes there's that way to escape that is to go to Proving Grounds or just to say, like, sometimes my goal isn't actually to get up to the next level of ladder. Like, sometimes my goal is to have fun for the night, and I want to play a few quick games, and I can't do that in Conquest. So I'm just going to play games and be very cautious about my like retreating strategy if I'm not at infinite, and I don't want to slide too much. So I'm just going to be a little extra cautious tonight because I don't want to set back my larger picture vision just to get what I want out of the game tonight. But I do think it's worth it to, sometimes you let yourself slide a little because you just want to have fun, even if you're not in the headspace to play super competitively. Just decide how much you're willing to give up of your larger vision in those cases. What about you, GC?
I like this one. I think this tip, infinite cubes on ladder, 10 in Conquest, it really highlights the difference between ladder and Conquest. I think all these points are really valuable, right? And I agree with you, Fiona. I love this idea of a fraction of your goals and looking at each game in that perspective, and you bring in a very strong point. Your goal doesn't have to be get infinite. Your goal can be have fun tonight without losing 3 ranks, right? 3 is your limit. And so it's a good idea there, right? Take each game, look at them in their isolation, but do not forget how they impact your bigger picture, and definitely build to that. The snap mechanic is the mechanic in this game. It's what makes it the uniqueness. It's what gives it its flavor. So counting these cubes, learning your snaps, I believe a lot of our tips are along these lines, and that's where you want to focus your efforts on. So I definitely agree with this. I definitely agree with it being number 1, because you got to think about those cubes up front, and keep that in mind, because that's what makes this game unique. And as we go through more of our tips, I like this one specifically being number 1 up front. Think about your cubes. With that being said, Rory, you want to take us on to the second one here?
Yeah, our second tip is, let me make sure I've got up here, is in a true 50-50, stay in. You lose the smaller value 100% of the time if you run. All right, Glazer, what brings us into this tip?
So I see a lot of people suggesting either always run or always stay in on 50-50s, and not content creators, right? But if you're on any of the Discords, people are always like, oh, I always stay in on those 50-50s. And no, and some people are like, oh, I always run. I just never stay in. I can never predict what my opponent does. Well, it's a 50-50. There's variance. No one can fully predict what an opponent off the other side of a computer screen who they've never met or seen does. In a true 50-50, stay in. If you always run, you're going to lose 100% of the time. And the example I have for us is you have Cosmo and Priority. They have 2 free lanes to play Hella in. That's a 50-50. You should always stay in. I don't care if that's an 8-cuber, a 4-cuber, or a 1-2 cuber. In a true 50-50, you're losing half that value versus winning, and the percentages just say stay in. Any thoughts about that before we get to bullet 2 here? Let's start, JJ.
Yeah, I strong agree with that. Again, it's all about the cubes. You mentioned on the last tip as well, the poker mindset. Snapping and retreating, and this tip as well, is something that didn't really click for me until somebody just kind of talked to me about the strategy behind betting and expecting value there. And I'm not going to try to repeat that here, because I'll mess it up horribly and confuse your loyal viewers. But that's exactly it. Like, you will always lose your cubes if you retreat from a 50-50, but the expected value of staying in a 50-50 is 0, which is higher than negative, because you're either going to lose cubes or you're going to gain your cubes. Now, if they snap you, right, that's no longer a 50-50. You're upping the cube count. I think this gets a little bit different if the cube stakes are getting higher off of a snap. But even then, it's probably there. It's probably there. If it's a true 50-50, even if they increase your cube count on you, you have a higher expected value if you just stick in there and hold it out. So I am pro stay in on 50-50s. Obviously, there's always caveats to the rule, right, Glazer? But if you've got to do a blanket rule, stay in. And then as you get accustomed to that, then you might start seeing some caveats show up, like you're in a conquest mode and you are 75% favored. So this might be the only 50-50 of the entire conquest, and everything else you have 75. But then that's not a true 50-50, right, Glazer?
Yeah, in general, especially in Conquest, when you know your opponent's deck, you need to know enough of the meta, and we'll get there later for how to do that, to know whether you're favored or not. If you are unfavored, you should be trying to snap your advantages, force 50-50s, stay in as much as possible, versus if you are the favored party, you should be running for 1 and 2 cubes reasonably often if you feel like you don't have the optimal situation, because your deck is so much more likely to put you in the optimal situation. So let's just jump to 2 here. If you don't, and the same situation as we talked about a few minutes ago, Cosmo and Hella. If you don't have Cosmo and you're deciding whether to stay in against a Hella deck. I don't care if it's 2 cubes or it's 8 cubes. Your strategy should generally not change here, at least on ladder. You don't have Cosmo. You're just betting they don't have Hella. That's not a 50-50. They have a 75% chance to see any given card in their deck because they see 75% of their cards. That's not 50-50, right? 75% is a lot more than 50-50. And again, we're barring stuff like rocks. Korg and Rockslide might change your math. If you had an invisible woman or a spider ham give you information, this is a rule outside of those. Usually run if your only play is betting they don't have it, the odds are much, much more in the favor that they do have it. Please go.
Yeah, and I like the way that it's worded there, right? If you're running because you bet they don't have it, and rather that be combo, card, whatever it may be, like, chances are, like you said, 75% of your deck you're going to see in almost every single Snap game. Of course, there's some caveats. Heck, you might see Limbo pop up, so you might be seeing more than 75% of your deck. But yeah, if you've got a bet on them not playing a card or them not having optimal draw when they only have 2 or 3 cards left in their deck, you're taking the wrong bet there. It's not a 50-50. Now, that being said, and this is not a tip, this is an anti-tip. There's nothing more fun than betting they don't have it and they don't have it.
Sounds like a proving ground strategy to me.
Here you go.
But I do think that it's, I agree 100%. And I was also going to bring up the magic of it all, that, sometimes it's even worse than a 75% chance in the opponent's favor. There are decks that, there are decks which don't see as much because you Korg them up, you rock slide them up. And then there are decks like Thanos or some Lockjaw decks, which can be very draw oriented and get a lot out on the board. And then if you're going into that last turn and you don't have a way to shut down one of the last 1 or 2 cards that they might have, then that's a good time to run away. So I think I agree. It's good to think about it as, if it's a true 50-50, that's 0 value to stay in versus negative value to pull out. And if it's, if it's not a true 50-50, then be ready to run, especially with the addition of cards like Magic or spaces like Limbo onto the board.
Cool. Number 3. Study the meta. Everyone says to do this, but I have a suggestion for how. So, check the Marvel Snap Zone tier list. It gives you a really great overview of what the decks are. Like, there will be different cards. Occasionally, there will be something that rises in the meta between tier lists. But as a general rule of thumb, the quickest and easiest way to find out what the meta is, what's being played right now, what's doing well right now, and you need to know not just what's doing well, but what's popular, is to check the Marvel Snap Zone tier list. And if you don't want to read the article, we got Yeti on the YouTube doing videos for all of them. So take the time, do it. And then, as you play games, practice predicting. If you need to use pen and paper, use pen and paper. There's 1,000 different ways to do it. You can just do it in your head. By turn 2, if they've played a card, or turn 3, practice predicting which of those Marvel Snap Zone tier list decks you think this is. Because 80% of your games are going to be against known decks. And the better you can get at quickly predicting what your opponent is playing, the better you are at knowing the meta. Cross-check after games. No one's asking you in the middle of games to stop and go check the tier list. You will time out. But if you can cross-check after a game, be like, oh, was I right? Is this a deck? And when you see it, oh my god, I don't know what this deck is. Well, then congrats. You got beat by something ahead of the meta. But that's still relatively rare. Fiona?
Yeah, this is actually something that I used. I used this particular strategy when I was first starting out, especially, and I've been guilty of not doing it as often lately. And I think that somebody asked me recently how I prepare for tournaments, and I was like, "Oh, I get anxious. I usually don't participate because I get too anxious. I back out, and I don't participate." And so one of the things that I'm thinking after this discussion I'm going to do before the next time I participate in tournaments, not sure when that's going to be able to happen at this point because my life is so busy, but hopefully soon, is I will try to do this, and I will actually write down on pen and paper and sticky putty to my wall behind my monitor in like big Sharpie on a few different pieces of paper, the major like archetypes and their core cards. And so if I put their core on the wall and then I like look at the wall as I'm playing, as I see the first cards, and I try to match the card I'm seeing on turn 1 or turn 2 to the archetype, then that gives me a much better idea of where the matchup is headed. And especially like we were just talking about, if you are in a matchup where you're superior and you're playing like conquest mode or friendly battle, so tournament mode, then you want to know if you're favored because you want to know that you can retreat more often. And if you know that you're not favored, you want to know to snap aggressively and stay in on these 50-50s. So it's very, information is power on all levels in Marvel Snap, even if that level is cross-checking the cards you see on turn 1 and 2 to a few pieces of paper that you sticky putty to your wall behind your monitor.
JJ?
Yeah, you guys covered it. You got to know the meta, study it up. The Marvel Snap Zone tier list, obviously an excellent spot. It's organized for you. You can use filter criteria to kind of, if you want to study a specific archetype and see which decks are most popular within that archetype. And also like listen to this podcast. You guys are already ahead of the game here, right? Everybody listening right now, you're already practicing tip number 3. So I believe in you. You've got this.
Here, can I be annoying for 1 second? Ready? Like, I'm a crazy person, right? Like, I spend an insane amount of time on putting together shit for this game. The meta right now at the tier 1 level is Darkhawk good stuff, Thanos, generally either Thanos Lockjaw or Thanos Move, but some Thanos Destroy, and the remnants of W's Thanos Control, and the Lambie move list. If you go down a tier, you've got a ton of Surfer, you've got Discard, you've got 2 flavors of Destroy, one built around Big Null, one built around Big Nimrod, and you've got the remnants of High Evolutionary, usually trying to do Moon Girl double up stuff. Congrats, that's most of the meta right now.
But that last one, was that Moon Girl double up stuff right at the very end you mentioned?
Yep.
Okay, I was listening for it because that's the deck I'm using. And just to kind of highlight why it's so important to study the meta, I'm not using one of the first S tier list, right? The very top, the Lambie Silk, incredible Angela engine. But knowing the meta, you don't have to play the top meta deck. If you can recognize what the top meta or what your opponent is, then you can recognize how to utilize your deck, even if it's not S tier or A tier.
Fiona?
Which?
Ooh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's, I'm running the Magic She-Hulk Moon Girl Infinite double up. I haven't seen it a lot, but I'm running it, and I do believe, right, Glazer, that was one of the very last ones, I think, out of the A tiers that you were saying there. I secretly was hoping that it wasn't A tier and I was running a B tier deck because then I'd feel much more powerful, but
it depends where your label is, right? Like if you want to do A and B, then it's a B tier. If you're doing S and A, then it's an A tier. Right? Like,
I do S and A.
Oh my gosh. Is Sarah Control up there?
Oh, Sarah Control should have been there. So the only Sarah Controls I'm seeing right now as like top tier contenders are almost all running Darkhawk good stuff packages. So I've just so in my head the reason I didn't separate them is because I've almost like entirely merged them in my brain based on tournament play this weekend. I don't think the meta has quite caught up to that yet, but tournament metas very often are predictive of what's coming in the next couple of weeks. Part of the reason I pay so much attention to tournaments. So my working assumption is that unless we get a return to Wave, and Cam is literally on Twitter as we speak, promoting Wave decks. So let's see if that takes off. I don't actually think it's very good, but I could be wrong. Unless we get a return to Wave, the best way to play Darkhawk is probably not Legion and instead Sarah, and I think we'll start to see that shift take shape.
Yeah. And I think that's a one last thought on this while we're talking meta, right? Again, it's not necessarily what's S, what's A, what's B. It's what's popular out there. So that's another part of studying the meta. See what videos are getting the most YouTube likes, see what your favorite content creators are pushing out there. Because I'm telling you, if the top 4 or 5 content creators all jump on a deck archetype, it's going to be out there. It's going to be popular. So, you can learn to play against that.
And you can almost always expect the newest card to be buzz for a few days.
Amen.
All right, let's do number. Roy, anything to add? No? Okay.
Nope.
Number 4. I like these two because they are 2 Marvel Snap Zone writers. I think 2 of the 3 with Lauren, main Marvel Snap Zone writers. And they are seemingly contradictory, but in fact just paradoxical. I think they're both true. Just you have to think about them. Den cautions. Being at the top of your game all the time is unrealistic. There are times to learn, experiment, have fun, and there are times to get serious. Sometimes you need to give yourself a break and lose a bunch of snap without focus. And then the best sentence in this section, this is what Proving Grounds is for. Safety, however, says try to play every game the same. Treat the first round of Conquest the same as the last. Ladder the same. Lack of structure and intention hurts lots of players. I don't know. JJ, want to go first on this one?
Yeah, this reminds me of my English teacher in high school. He used to laugh at people who said practice makes perfect. He'd tell you that just straight up was not true. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I think that's kind of what this is, what Safety Blade's kind of getting at here, right? Is when you go into Proving Grounds, play it like it's your Infinity Conquest. Get into those snap habits. Make sure that you're using every bit of your muscle memory and your thought waves, because as you do that, you're building shortcuts in your cognitive abilities to where, oh, boom, you don't have to think about the line, you just start seeing the line. So that perfect practice makes perfect is really important. But to Den's point, and Fiona, you mentioned this earlier with, sometimes your goal is just to have fun, and sometimes you need to let your brain wash out. And I think that's where these can mirror and kind of connect, right? Lack of structure and intention can hurt you. So if your intention is to do a self-wash, is to have fun, is to just go into Proving Grounds and let go, then do that. Take that break from it and let go, and realizing cognitively very much respect that you are not playing the game competitively, and keep that in mind so that you do it too often, you're going to break your good habits, you're going to build bad habits. But if you go in there with the mindset of this is me doing perfect practice, or this is me having fun, and tackle your game session with that intent, then you'll see yourself kind of improve and get through that one. So yeah, I think I like this one. I like this one a lot. I think it is a nice duality. And I think it was really good, Glazer, that you put these two together, because even though they feel like opposites and the separates of both coins, there is that very common thread through them that connects them together.
Snaps to that. And you can also think about it with brewing a tiny bit. It's like, oh, I'm just going to have fun brewing silly decks. Oh, and go to Proving Grounds. Yeah.
You also just need to not lie to yourself about your goals, which I think is what combines here, right? Like that.
Yep.
That's a big problem. Glazer and I are both teachers. That's a big problem with a lot of people who are trying to learn things. If you want to improve, then you can improve, but you have to be honest about yourself. And I think card gamers suffer from this the most, in my experience, is that people will be like, oh, I'm playing casually, but they're not playing casually. Every loss is 1,000 cuts. And then other people will be like, oh, I'm building serious meta decks, but they're not taking the principles of what the meta is seriously, and it leads to poor deck building and deck selection choices. And I myself am definitely guilty of this, but it's definitely something to really keep in mind. As Safety says there, that structure, I think intention is actually the most important. It's just if you come at your play with intentionality, and then intentionality doesn't have to be seriousness, it just has to be self-conscious. you'll find yourself like really enjoying Marvel Snap and eventually improving in your goals. But enjoyment, since this is a game, should be first.
So, has anyone watched Lambie stream? Like when you watch Lambie stream, there's like this intention to his play, right? Like he's built these habits at a level. It's my favorite story that Roy has heard 7 million times. I'm sorry, Roy, but we used to play a different competitive card game, and then after the tournaments, we'd all go to the bar. And at the bar, that we'd break into 2 groups. And group 1 was bullshitting about life. We were drinking heavily, singing karaoke, having a blast. And group 2 was sitting at a table and talking about the games they played that day. And Lambie is clearly group 2, right? But that's, if you want to be good enough to hit infinite, good enough to get infinity borders, you need to know when you're being serious and set clear goals. If you want to be Lambie, you need to do what safety says. You need to not have that off switch, or at least very rarely have that off switch. You can still experiment, but your experiments are now in search of the very best thing so that you can break the next thing first. Fiona?
I actually do have something to say on that. And so this is actually the reason why I like to be playing multiple card games at once, so that I can have another card game where it's like my off switch. So if Marvel Snap is the game that I'm trying to build those cognitive connections in, and those like good habits, I'll be playing another game. Like right now it's been Dominion, a card game, a lot, or just like I've been playing a card game called Spirit Island, which is like a co-op board game. Yeah, it's great. And so those are games that really make me think about connections between cards in very different ways than Marvel Snap does. So I'm still practicing some of the skills, but I'm also not, it's not my main thing, which gives me that opportunity to say, I do need to release. I do need to laugh and tend to just like be silly with it. And then I still think a small percentage of the time, at least for me, I still need to do that with Marvel Snap, because otherwise I find myself getting too stressed out, and Sega becomes my soft cuddle buddy becomes too big of a part of the stream, and then eventually it just becomes Sega's show because I can't deal with playing any more games. So don't get too stressed out with it. Have fun. It's a game first and foremost, and even if you do want to build those connections and be always on with it, you can at least find a similar game to have that off switch handy.
So I couldn't agree more. And I think that's part of the draw of Marvel Snap for me. I mean, not a major spoiler, but I was one of the drunk people singing karaoke, not the people sitting there talking about games. So I'm not advocating for Lambie's mindset or my own mindset. Half the time I'm watching The Dragon Prince with my son, which is not an optimal way of playing a game, right? Fantastic show, by the way. If you liked the Avatar: The Last Airbender, you should 100% watch Dragon Prince. But neither here nor there. If your goal, don't go around being like, I'm terrible at this game, I can't get better at this game, or don't go around being like, this game is all variant. You see these things all the time, right? If you're not going to put in at least a little bit of, what's the word, and what's it called, a magic spike?
That's highly competitive players are called spikes.
Yeah. Don't, if you're gonna, and I guess the Snap version of spike is Lambie, right? That's what I'm coining right now. Don't spike or Lambie it. If you're not going to at least do a little bit of spiking and Lambieing it, you're gonna only be in the fun tier kind of forever. You need to have at least a little bit of that, or at least know how to set your goal and put yourself in that mindset when you need to.
All right, I'm going to move us on to the 5th of these, which is you're playing too fast. This is a very classic card game trap. Is playing too fast. Now, also playing too slow, but that's a different thing. I think you've got to walk slowly before you can run in card games, and because Marvel Snap also has an internal timer, it's not as big of a problem as it is in some other games of people playing slow. But definitely playing too fast, think through your turns, don't fall into sort of rote plays that may not come from the sort of cognitive muscle memory that JJ mentioned earlier. It's just, number go up, I play card there, which is what your brain wants to do on a base level, but you need to specifically learn to read board states before you can sort of play effortlessly.
Yeah, I mean, you really should be thinking 2-3 turns in advance whenever you can. Like we said, identify where your opponent's deck is. Okay, if they drew the best hands, what can I expect on turn 3, 4, 5? That takes time to process. But additionally, I like Brade's point here, right? Just do not lock in your turn unless you've decided what you'll do if your opponent snaps. And I think what he's alluding to here is like whether or not you stay in or you retreat, because once a snap comes in, right, if you're already locked in and it's at the end of the rope timer, you've got 5 seconds to decide to leave or stay in. But also, right, and this is getting into it, right, snap is the only information that you get in the middle of your planning phase. All the rest of the information comes during card reveal. So if you play your turn and you look at the board state and say, if they snap, it means that they drew the nuts. It means that they're going to put that card in the left position. If that snap would cause you to change your play and you've already locked in, you have no option but to retreat. So I think that's another big point here is like slow down and consider if you get more information in the middle in the form of a snap, do you need to change your play? And if so, don't lock in. Wait for it. At least I hate it. I hate it. But until they change it to be competitive, you should probably never lock in before 50% of the rope.
So I have an example I want to give for this. It's turn 1, you play card X that gives you priority. Opponent plays nothing. You now have priority. Going into turn 2, they take their time and snap in the middle, but you've already played Angela. In your hand was Echo. If you've played enough snap, you know a snap before turn 2 means Zabu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that before turn 2 snap, all right, cool, they got an on-curve Zabu. Can I beat an on-curve Zabu? And half the time you should just be running at that point anyway, right? But like now, like you had Echo in hand, which could have sniped their Zabu, and at that point, their snap has locked them into a bad situation. And you probably 50-50ing around that, or they're better, because if you played like Nebula, right, they're very likely to play that Zabu on Nebula in a nice safe spot. So you can echo them and like win, like not win that game, but give yourself extremely high odds of winning that game. Snapping gives away, the second part of the point is snacking gives away information. It tells your opponent things about what's happening in the game. And when you know all these extra things, snaps at certain points tell you things. If you play a big card and your opponent snaps a little too fast, you'll never guess what 4-3 they have in their hand. Mm-hmm. Like these are, like you should be, when they snap, immediately going, okay, what can I learn from this? And if you've already played your cards, what you learned from that isn't actionable. Fiona?
Yeah, this reminds me of after the snap-offs too, when I was like kind of getting into the creator community. One of the first people I started texting with was Lammy, because I think Lammy is like about my age, looks to me at least. So I just felt like I'm more approachable, and I was like, hey, and also Lammy was like, hey, I'm your biggest fan now because of the during the snap-offs too in the chat for it. And I was like, after being like, how long have you played? So I reached out to Lammy, and we were talking about Lammy's shift from Hearthstone to Marvel Snap and stuff. And one of the things that Lammy said was, I think Lammy said like my favorite, something along the lines of like my favorite thing about this game is the social aspect of it, which is the snap. Mm-hmm. So I agree. And then I want to echo something JJ just said, which was that almost all of your information comes during the reveal phase. The only part that comes during the decision-making phase is the snap. So snapping makes this a social game, makes it one of intimidation sometimes, bluffing sometimes, but also just it makes it it's social game, like with poker, like when you're, it's the same thing as betting, going all in. And so I think that was something that stuck with me, is like something that Lammy said was like, this is my one of my favorite things about this game. And I asked like, what do you like about this compared to the other game?
I like that it takes 5 minutes, not 40.
All right, let's move ourselves on to top 10 tip number 6, which is there are 4 reasons to snap: the obvious snap, the great hand, the matchup snap, and the bluff snap. Glazer, please walk us through these with a focus on summary.
Sure. The obvious snap is when you're obviously going to win. you've got whatever thing means you just win. It's generally not the best time to snap, but it is a time that everyone fundamentally snaps. The thing that lets you win. The great hand is your Zabu on 2, your Mind Stone on 1. You have the thing that you want in your hand, the condition that you have decided in advance makes you more favored than not, so you snap. Then you have the matchup snap, that is much more of a conquest mode thing, but sometimes they'll play like 2 cards, and like the second card will be Morbius, and you know that your deck runs Enchantress, and at the end of the game you're going to be able to play Maximus or I don't know, Lady Deathstrike and blow up their Dracula play, and that's gonna like win you the game for this matchup as long as you draw those cards, so you snap. And lastly is the bluff snap, and the card you bluff snap with is Shang-Chi, right? Like there's others, but it's usually just Shang-Chi, and then you're saying respect that I should have Shang-Chi here even if I don't. So
yeah, and the only thing that I'd add on to this one, Glazer, is like these are the 4 reasons to snap.
Mhm.
Go out there and practice identifying them.
Oh yeah.
Because and take the moment after your game to look back at the game and retrospect and see if you were correct on identifying what that snap is. Because again, if you can identify what kind of snap came in at you, then you know more about what your opponent wants to do.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would add on top of that is to go off that example of, turn 2, they have Morbius, you have Enchantress, you've got this. And when you're in Conquest mode, like you said, it's the matchup snap. That's especially good in round 1 of a Conquest mode, or if you're playing in a multiple decks, 1 ban like format. So like I'm organizing a tournament soon, which is going to be 3 decks, 1 ban, no duplicates across them. And so if you're in one of those situations, you're in Conquest, you don't know what the opponent's playing yet, or they don't know what you're playing yet, that round 1 snap, they're way more likely to stay in because they don't know it's a bad matchup for them. And once you reveal that you have Enchantress, they're going to be aware of that in future rounds.
A quick note to looking back at your games. The Marvel Snap Zone tracker, I think that each tracker offers something different that has value. I'm not going to pretend that this is my favorite or the only one I use. The easiest to use is Untapped. But Marvel Snap Zone tracker has one amazing tool that, as far as I'm aware, does not exist on the others. For your recent games, you can go check what the board looked like at the end of each turn. Like it'll show you like what cards were on each side with which locations. So if you're interested in improving to that level and reviewing your games to that level to improve, and like the earlier you are in the game, I think the more value this has, or the more room you feel like you have to improve, the more value this has, right? If you're like, I can't remember what the board state was like on turn 3, you can load up your tracker, assuming you had it running during the game, and just be like, oh, turn 3, they had a debris there, and I had a Korg and a Zabu, and I ended up missing Rock Slide, so I played Iron Lad. Also, that's not going to be on one of these slides, but I was talking about it with Browde, and that's such a cool thing to know, by the way. If they play Zabu, and on turn 3 they play Iron Lad, that means they don't have Rock Slide, and that means they're not, and if Iron Lad doesn't hit Rock Slide, that means that's another turn they don't have Rock Slide, right? That means they have to top deck Rock Slide on turn 5 or 6. That's really, really useful information.
Right? Going back to knowing that meta, you know that deck always wants to do that on 4. If not, they didn't draw that card. They didn't get that card in their deck. That's the way they want to play it.
All right. We ready for the next one? Number 7. This is our Lambie tip. A Marvel Snap match is super short, enough to be able to create a whole game in our head without needing to think about it for several minutes. It's not true for anyone but Lambie, but it's fine. It's just part of his point. This is the important part is right here. Try to visualize the end result of your game rather than the current turn. In the end, your goal is to be in the lead when the game ends, not this turn. And I want to say something about this before I throw it to. This happens all the time. It happened 3 times with GC and I during the tournament, where opponents would play something to gain priority or to win a lane right now. Gain priority and win a lane mean the same thing functionally, right? To win a lane right now. And winning a lane right now doesn't mean you're winning it at the end. You don't want to just play for more power now. That's very often super counterproductive. And Fiona?
I think this deck I mean, sorry, this tip is why I'm most comfortable with decks that throw priority and onto turn 6, because I feel they're a little bit safer. And it's also why I love the decoy lane tactic. And I say a lot that if you're going into turn 6 and you're not threatening all 3 lanes, you shouldn't go into turn 6. Now, this is obviously not always true, and what I mean by it is not threatening all 3 lanes visually on the board, but say you have like a decoy lane that you've put some power into, and it looks like it's one of the lanes that you're going to try to shore up. And you actually have a really good way to shore up and put power in the other 2 lanes if you just completely ignore it and say they have to play something there, and in each of the other 2 lanes, they have to play significant power, or else they're going to lose. And in order to, say, make up that like 2-3 power differential or 3-4 power differential in one lane, to be safe about it, they're going to have to play a significant amount of their limited energy on turn 6 there, which means that they're not going to be able to play enough big drops in the other lanes to make it work. I also love decks that have a decoy like this. So say a Professor X deck, like a Thanosy Professor X deck, for example, where you might have like Soulstone and Iron Man maybe like in one lane, and you have Professor X locking down another lane. And then on turn 6, you can go ahead and play Valkyrie if you don't have priority, and you can hit everything that they just played out in your Iron Man Soulstone lane, basically guaranteeing it. Or you can play Spectrum to boost your Professor X and anything else that got locked in that lane. If it looks like you're losing it, and it looks like you're saying you have to fight, and you're saying I'm fighting for these other 2 lanes, you're going to have to throw a lot of power there. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh wait, I'm actually only going to throw all my power into one of those 2 lanes and beef up Professor X. Essentially, like I've stacked my ongoings into one of those lanes. I play the 4th ongoing in the lane with Spectrum, boosting Ant-Man and boosting Professor X. Those sorts of plays that you're going into turn 6, either where you don't have priority and you take away their power with something like Enchantress or Valkyrie and just even it out. It's games like that where you look like you're losing a lot of the time in the first few turns. And a lot of the time you actually want to be mathematically losing on the board so that you don't have priority in turn 6, so you can screw with them. And personally, I love that. I think it's really fun. And it makes me feel safer because those are the games where you are visualizing in your head. You have a clear path to victory, and that path involves confusing them as to how much power you're going to have on the board until you hit them with it. JJ, anything you want to add to this one?
No, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I have this image of Lambie sitting at the breakfast table eating cereal, running simulations just in his head constantly. And this tip that he threw at us, the way he starts it off, that just solidifies it for me. The man's a computer.
A computer with abs. All right. Post broke my brain. All right. Tip 8 is from an old KM Best Marvel Snap Zone article that I really, really loved. Your goal in a game of Snap is to win each location by as little as possible. A 3-power win is the same as a win by 30. Winning a contested lane wastes your opponent's resources in that spot, but investing too much in a contested spot is fewer resources to win another lane.
Wow. I forgot this was here and kind of just went into that, didn't I?
But it's cool. Like, wait till I give your sales pitch. I got some things to say that are nice about how well you do this.
Oh, thank you. I don't have much to add that I didn't already add. I think that really number 2 here, they're all super, they're all super tied together. Number 3 is kind of like, saying like investing too much in a contested spot is fewer resources to win another lane. Yeah, that's true for you and for them. So ideally you have that like one decoy like lane that you're ahead by like a few power, and you force them to waste their power there. And you say, I don't care, because if I don't spend time upping my power there, I can definitely secure the other 2 lanes. And even if it's a win by 3 power in each lane, or in 2 out of 3 lanes that you can secure that way, that's much better than saying like, I have this one contested lane, I know they're going to put power there, I have to put a bunch more power back there in order to secure it, and then I can only secure one of the other 2 lanes. Yeah, that's not as good of a strategy.
So in a way, it's almost like killing locations, right? It's killing the value of their cards that they played there. And then, like, if your numbers are lower, then you're assuming the effect makes up the value. Like, Zabu is a better card than Lizard, but Lizard can kill Zabu in a lane. JJ?
Yeah, no, you guys covered this one pretty well. I full agree. I really like that comparison to 3 power versus 30 power, because sometimes that's exactly what it feels like. I guess the only thing I'd add on to this is take advantage of your opponents who haven't learned this. You see them putting a bunch of resources into a lane, give up on that lane. Let them keep doing that. Let them throw it away. So yeah, I'd say like keep a lookout for folks who haven't learned this lesson and abuse that.
All right. Roy, anything to add?
No, I don't. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay. After snapping, priority is the most important aspect of the game, i.e., like, most important aspect bar none. Know how to win and lose it when you need to for various matches. And the best way to do this is, again, proving grounds is your friend. Practice winning and losing priority on purpose. You'll know when priority is bad for you, assuming you're consciously thinking of it, but go practice. Be like, I need to lose priority. What do I do? And the secret superpower of Jeff is one of the best win or lose priority cards in the whole game.
Yeah, just 2 things I want to throw into this one.
Oh, sorry, wait. I want to credit Zombies Go Nom Nom because it's his point. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Good call out. 2 things I want to throw into this one. Keep an eye out for Echo. Nothing feels worse than calculating priority perfectly and forgetting that Echo's on the board. And the second one is the graphical indication of who has priority takes a while to update. I lost the game before coming on the cast tonight because I had priority according to the little outline. I played my move. I looked too early. It had not updated on the screen yet. Calculate it, watch it, keep an eye on it. This is extremely important. Don't take the first thing you see for granted that it's true. It was 8 cubes. I'm mad.
Fiona? No?
I don't think I have anything more to add. I think I've definitely spoken to this throughout quite a bit. And yeah, like I said, it's fun.
So I want to talk about Jeff and Captain Marvel placement in regards to this. So you should have some idea whether you want to win or lose priority when you play either of these cards. Sometimes you want to win priority, so like Galactus is the easy example, right? You're not necessarily playing those cards in Galactus, but you really, really want priority when you're trying to Galactus. And you know you can play Jeff in an uncontested lane and take priority, assuming you had some earlier power elsewhere. Or you know that you can play Captain Marvel on top of what you already have, giving them priority in 2 other lanes. She's not going to be killed in a lane, and he won't be killed in a lane because they move. Relating to that last point, that's why they went in this order. Those cards, move cards in particular, but Captain Marvel and Jeff very specifically, are not killed when they're in a less power lane. They can either A, contribute to you winning that lane later, or B, be moved to where you want, and that will help you win or lose priority based on where you place them.
So in this tip specifically, the replacement for Jeff is Captain Marvel. We've solved the question.
The replacement for Jeff is Spider-Man. I'm convinced the replacement for Jeff is Spider-Man.
It's kind of feeling that way, yeah.
All right. We've got 1.5 more tips. Tip 10, we've said it 1,000 times. Proving grounds is your best friend for practicing these tips. Go in and don't do the fist bump thing so your opponent knows you're not just snapping for no reason. Instead, pick literally any of these tips, and practice it. Practice it for a full Conquest round or more until it starts to feel natural for you and not awkward. Very often what I hear is, how do I get better at the game? What you do is you take one of these tips and you say, I'm going to play 3 Proving Ground games as hard as I can with this tip in mind, and internalize it.
It's funny because used to, I mean, in the Snap Offs too, after my performance there, people were also calling me the emote queen or the emote god for a while. Because I had started each of my rounds by like going, hello, fist bump. And then I would fist bump at the end of every single game. Because I just like made me happy and like felt like it was, being a good sport. And now I have untrained myself from doing that because of this unspoken rule that if you say hello, fist bump in Conquest mode, you're going to mean, please snap, I'm snapping, I want to do this fast. And I'm like, I did. So it's a bit of a personal gripe there that I don't know how to practice good emote sportsmanship anymore because I've untrained it.
Oh, Fiona, it is such a beautiful thing about you that you're actually sitting here and you're like, wow, the worst thing about Conquest is I can't be a good sportsman anymore. I have to figure out how to be good to my opponent in a new way. God, you are too wholesome. I love you so much, Fiona.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, no, Proving Ground is beautiful for practice. I think this is excellent spot to top off the tips.
All right. But there's a bonus tip, so I lied.
In classic Glazer fashion, yes. This
So
bonus tip.
this is my bonus tip that I throw whenever I talk about competitive Snap. This literally is the same exact thing I say whenever I talk about competitive Snap. You don't have to do any of these things. These are ways to win more often at Snap, but if you're happy and having fun doing other things, have a blast. Your value as a person is in no way tied up to how good or bad you are at any card game, Marvel Snap or otherwise. Don't, to the best of your ability, please don't let it affect your mental health negatively. Like, if losing is affecting your mental health negatively, these tips can help you. But if you're having fun doing what you're doing, don't change to be quote unquote better. You're happy, you're having fun. That's way more valuable than, I don't know, a stupid border that you can't even see.
Yeah. No, that's strong. I'm glad that you put this in here. Yeah, have fun.
100%.
Spark joy, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Enjoy the game. Enjoy yourself. Yeah.
And
we can make this wholesome.
and if you're not, like, Fiona has an awesome Discord. JJ, do you have a Discord?
I do.
Oh, well, JJ has what I'm assuming is an awesome Discord. I should probably be on these. I'm in too many Discords and I never check any, and I feel guilty. So I'm trying to like cut down on the Discords I'm in. Sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was going to say, one thing I do with my Discord is like I turn off notifications for everyone on join, and I have, because I'm a writer and a streamer, I have two different things. So when you join during onboarding, you can sign up for stream alerts, writer alerts, or both alerts or no alerts. And then I do at stream alerts specifically for like, I'm going to go live. And then I also have like games like Marvel Snap specifically. So you can sign up for like the Marvel Snap content that's not like I'm going live right now, but like I'm thinking about this deck, or here's this really good information to catch before you like spend your spotlight caches, things like that. I highly recommend to anyone running a Discord to go into your settings for the server and turn off the notifications are on for everything by default setting. It will make people less likely to leave your server and more likely to pop in when something specific to them they want to see.
Yeah, amen. Down with at everyone culture. I recently just went through all my servers, categorized them, folderized them, and guess what?
That's
if
impressive.
you've ever used everyone on your Discord server, I muted your notifications and suppressed everyone. I did it.
Yeah.
So, Marvel Snapzone, I did it twice on their Discord, and then I was like, "This is shitty," and I just never did it again. But the only, what the worst thing is? When the game updates, and I get like 12 notifications from different servers, like my whole Discord just goes completely crazy whenever there's a patch or a news or an update. Where my whole, it's just like, I'm like, oh my god, I knew 10 minutes ago. Leave me alone. All right, let's move on from here. Roy.
All right, it is time for our final segment of each and every episode, which is Variant of the Week. And we have Captain Marvel this week, and Carol has some absolutely fantastic variants. And we've got 3 here, which means that a couple of us overlapped here. All right, so the first one on the left is sort of Carol after a a pretty bad fight. Who is the artist on this one? Which one of
The
you
first
picked?
two are both. JJ and I both picked it. The first two are both Peach Momoko, I believe.
Oh, Peach Momoko. I was thinking it was Peach, but I didn't want to misattribute. So the sort of battle scarred Peach, who picked you and Jesse both picked that one?
Yep.
So, JJ, why don't you, since you're the guest here, explain why you picked this one?
I love me some Peach Momokas.
Very, very
the fact that we've got two Peach coming for Captain Marvel, and also other cards that have two Peach. Please stop this. I can't choose the favorite of my children. I can't choose the favorite of my pets, and I cannot choose the favorite of my Peach Momokas. But here I had to go with this Battle Worn one. I feel like it's got a little bit more detail, which I kind of enjoy, and the kind of action pose, this Carol that is obviously been in a fight, but she's not down and out, and she's just got that stink eye looking right at you like, I'm about to beat your ass. That it was that look in the eyes that finally pushed me over the edge and said, this is my favorite Marvel.
I like a certain dynamism. I want it to look like there's action happening. Like this is something that's not just a pose. This is something in a comic that like could have happened or like is interesting visually. It's my problem with most of the Valkyrie variants because I love Valkyrie, but most of them just look like she's posing on a cover. I don't love posing on a cover. I want interiors. And that's what this Captain Marvel feels like.
So I am assuming then, Fiona, this middle Peach is yours. Why did you pick this one?
So I picked the Peach Momoko, which has Captain Marvel rising up out of some clouds into a starry night background. And I picked this for a couple reasons. One is I agree that I like how the previous one has this dynamism of looking like it could really be from like an action sequence in a comic book fight. I like just there's no other way to say it, but I like how cute this one is. I like cute stuff. And I also really like the swirls that are both in the clouds and in her hair here. So you have mirrored swirls and the clouds around her and the art that they're done. And then in the locks of hair close to her face or neck. And then also at the end of like some of the trails of her hair. And you get a little bit of it too in the red banner belt sash that's coming away from her. I also, just from a visual design perspective, having been working a lot with my graphic artist illustrator for my Adventure College student handbook, one thing she taught me is that, triangular ways to make the eye move are like make an image very dynamic. And you also have that in the previous one. You have a triangle of reds in the first one between the hands and one boot and the other boot, and then her upper shoulders, and that kind of moves the eye visually in that way. And then in this one, you have two big triangles going on. You have the one that is made out of the swirls and the upper right clouds, and then in her hair, and then down at the very bottom going over the captain. And then you also have the triangle of reds again from her upper shoulders to her belt to the part of her belt sash that is swirling in front of her. And you also just have a very visual triangle almost around her as she's coming out of the clouds, this effect. So all of that just made it really feel dynamic and swirly and cute and fun. And I liked that vibe of her rising up in the air. Mm-hmm.
I have never learned more from someone talking about their favorite variant than just now.
Well,
there you go. Graphic design pick of the night is look at your favorite images, find the triangles.
I'll be quick about mine. I am a sucker for the late 90s, early 2000s Heroes Return era of Marvel Comics, which was Carol was Warbird then. This was her time period between being Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel, and then coming back to Captain Marvel in the sort of modern era with her Jamie McKelvey suit. This is my second. I love the modern Captain Marvel suit, but in my heart, I will always love the Warbird stories that she did in Kurt Busiek's Avengers and Iron Man. They are underrated gems, I think, of sort of late 90s, early 2000s comics. And so I have a huge sentimental attachment to this era of Carol, which sort of put her back on the map after years of well, if you know anything about the 1980s and her character, she was put on the shelf by Marvel editorial after not a very nice time for the character in the 1980s. And so sort of her triumphant return to sort of regular publishing was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and set the stage for her sort of awesome re-envisioning that has happened in the aughts and to present. So big fan of the Warbird Arrow Carol. Warbird Arrow Carol. There we go. Well,
I like everything about this one except that I hate costumes where women characters don't wear pants. Like, it just drives me crazy. Like, it's so hard. It's so hard for me to imagine being like, I'm going to go be a superhero. Please let me put on my thong. Like, it's
There's a reason why.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Sorry.
There's a reason. There's a reason why when I cosplay, I like to do drag.
Yeah.
Like I've done drag as Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, as Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher, for like charity shows. It was so fun, and also like the outfits are reasonable for fighting. Reasonable.
But the rest of the design is so good for this one too. Like, just put some pants on her.
Or just like, here's the other thing I would say. Even just like, this is not the as ideal solution, but just sexualize the masculine characters just as much. Just try doing that. Just try doing that, because then at least it's not a double standard.
I mean, but like, you're not going to be like a guy culture with like a thong and a bulge, right? Like, the sheer fact that sounds so absurd is like enough reason right there to know that this is a terrible idea.
Anyway, yeah.
And it's so close. Her boots are so very close. Like, she quite literally is missing just enough to be considered pants.
Well, her butt wouldn't be hanging out if it connected, so.
Exactly.
All right. On that happy note, let's bring this episode to a close. All right. So, Fiona, tell our loyal listeners and loyal viewers about your content, what you do, where to find you, and all of that awesome stuff.
So I think you've heard it here, but stick with me and you'll get some enlightenment, some education, some just informative talks. I really love Marvel Snap, so I love talking openly about my things that I'm learning about it. And I am Series 3 incomplete. I am relatively new, but I'm still pretty competitive, I'd like to think. And I'm seen as it. And I think if you hang out with me, I've noticed a number of my viewers in the last few weeks excitedly, some of the popular people in my Discord, excitedly telling me that they are hitting 90, they're hitting infinite for the first times or for the second times ever. And they've been playing much longer than I have. And so I like to think that that's because of a culture of helping each other learn and asking questions and how I talk about things. I also am a professional editor and sensitivity reader, and I do sliding scale for indie publishers. I have an English and a sociology degree, and I specialize specifically for sensitivity reading in neurodivergence, disability, and LGBTQIA plus topics. I will be organizing a charity fundraiser tournament with another streamer, with a couple other streamers signed on for casting, and we'll be announcing that within a couple of weeks, probably right after SnapCon. So especially if you are a creator who'd be interested in participating, reach out to me. And otherwise, stay tuned for that. You can find me and my writing and such in my Discord, as well as on Twitch. And most importantly for me is just to maintain a cozy, cute, community-oriented vibe where I can unabashedly stim and play with my stuffed animals to help me not take things too seriously during stream. And I will always try to be upfront with you about my opinions and to honestly consider your deck suggestions and your deck questions, because that's how I learn too. And it's also how we spread the love of Marvel Snap. And I'm really hoping that the fall of collector's tokens is an era that doesn't last long and is shortly reversed, and that Marvel Snap continues to grow because I love it. And I also hope that you might love D&D. So stay tuned, because I'll be starting a Dungeons & Dragons live play web series late next month, starring a couple of professional voice actors, an aspiring VA, and also a friend from Teddy Ninja and Mai's Discord. And so it'll be set in a magic punk world at a college where everybody winds up investigating the same missing teacher's office on the first day of their supposed classes. So So if you like Dungeons and Dragons, if you like Marvel Snap, that's most of my content right now. You can look up Adventure College, Student Handbook, Kickstarter. You'll see what I make, or you can just join the Shade Story crew. Everyone's a player character here.
All right, my turn. Like, you did an amazing job of selling yourself, but instead of saying too much, here's what I've got. One, did y'all just hear that episode where she immediately cut to the heart of the matter like 17 times in a row? That's extraordinarily high level gameplay, high level thought, and like not just on Snap, on life. Longtime listeners know where we stand politically. She's on the right side of those issues as well. It matters. Support people who believe in things that help other people. I'm going to pay her the highest compliment I pay anyone. I think you should be a teacher. I think you would be absolutely phenomenal and have so much to offer other human beings, especially those that are growing and learning. And I could not more highly recommend that you go follow her. Like, even if all you care about is Marvel Snap, you listened to this episode. What are you doing not following her? Like, she's at the top level of thought and competitive spirit in this game, and she's an excellent human being. So please, Fiona Shade Stories on Twitch and Fiona Shade Story on Twitter.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to JJ. JJ, same thing. Tell us, tell our loyal listeners and tell our loyal viewers where they can find you, what your content is all about, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I love my live content. Is where I pour most of my energy and thought into. You can find me out there on the video sources like YouTube, TikTok, and the Twitter, but it is the live content that I eat and breathe and I love. We've got a stream schedule, but do not be surprised if we end up starting late and ending late. But you can catch me most nights for Variety Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays Marvel Snap, and then my big stream on Marvel Snap on Sundays. Those are primarily in the evening times of the Eastern time zone. We have a lot of fun on the channel. My channel is the channel of mispronunciations and misplays, but I often like to very much think through my moves live with chat. I'm very open to backseating because that is how we all grow together, is discussing what options are available and what we can get through there. Some days I get sweaty, some days I get stinky, some days I am literally just talking to chat and got Agatha on autopilot using my voice modifications through channel point redemptions that you guys control to put me where whichever character you want to listen to at the time. So yeah, just come hang out with us. I love to engage with chat. I enjoy playing Marvel Snap, but especially if you're into older Super Nintendo games, we're currently working through a Super Mario World ROM hack, the 12 magical orbs, on Variety Tuesday. I also do a little DC Dual Forces rel. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where you can find me, right there on the twitch.tv.
So I met JJ, and I'm saying Jesse and GC in my head breaks me, so that's why you're JJ to me. I don't know, a few weeks ago we casted together, and several weeks ago we just started randomly talking more, and I feel like he's incredibly high positive energy always, even when things get controversial, even when things get difficult. There's like a high level discourse that expects everyone to be treated like adults and treated well. That's absolutely phenomenal to see. In addition, despite like the happiness and the joy, there's a willingness to like find both the positive thing and the best thing. There's really, really high level analysis. Very seriously, I think he's the single best commentator of live Snap games in the game, period. Like, bar none. There's a reason that he does both the Snap Fan Opens and the Snap Battle Arenas. He's like, JJ and Coco are like my big two as far as like calling games of Marvel Snap. I think that they're both unbelievably phenomenal at like positivity, explaining without over-explaining, getting to the heart of things, deep level analysis. That's what you get from his content too. And like, you're just, the list of people that come on this podcast is fairly carefully curated. I try and make sure it's people I genuinely like and can enthusiastically recommend. And go follow JJ at JesseJames, and that's just 2 E's after the first J on Twitch and Twitter and everywhere else.
All right, that brings us to the actual very end of the episode. But before I can sign off, I just got to remind you, my loyal listeners, where you can find us on social media. We are on Twitter/X at SnapJudgeCast. We are on the Marvel Snap Zone Discord, where we are incredibly grateful to be their official podcasting partner. Our email is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. We also are on Mastodon at snapjudgments with an E at tabletop.vip. And last but not least, our YouTube, which is at snapjudgmentspod for the daily snap takes from Aaron. So now I actually get to sign off here. JJ, Jesse, thank you so much for being an absolutely awesome guest. This was a really great discussion this week. So awesome to have you on.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. DM's open, guys. I'd love to come back anytime once you guys start recycling and rewashing the rounds.
We will be glad to have you back. Same is true for you, Fiona. Thank you so much for being on the show. We greatly appreciate you coming on and offering a lot of awesome insight that we have not heard on this show before, or very often in Marvel Snap content, in my experience.
You're absolutely welcome. Thanks so much. I had a really nice time getting to talk about Marvel Snap at this level for this long. It was a lovely time. So please, if you want me back for another show, another kind of thing, or you know anyone who does, this has been an absolute treat for me. Y'all are wonderful people, and just it's so fun to get to talk at this detail of level about my favorite game. Besides Baldur's Gate 3, my favorite game, that is.
That's what Roy's been playing quietly this whole time, so it's fine.
No, I have not actually been playing. I've been balancing my checkbook is actually what I've been doing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Glazer, you are about to go off into the world, travel. I wish you, and I know our loyal listeners and loyal viewers, wish you safe travels as well. So, Aaron, as always, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I'll try not to bother you while you're playing Baldur's Gate.
All right, friends. Stay safe, make good choices, and keep on snapping.